So what happens when Spider-Man stops pulling his punches? Let's find out. So what this does is this opens up, this being Ultimate Spider-Man #2, this opens up with Spider-Man basically learning about his new powers. Because remember, like, Peter Parker just became Spider-Man. And as he's going through, he does kind of muse to himself a little bit about how strong he is, how agile and fast he is, all that kind of stuff. But in the midst of him kind of figuring out what his greater role is, he ends up coming across this guy who's breaking into a bank. Now, the funny thing is it shows the inexperience of Peter, and this is where him not pulling his punches, where he just doesn't hold back, this is where it's all gonna come to a head. Because what goes on here is that as they're talking, this guy's just kind of like, so who are you supposed to be, right? And Peter's like, yeah, I don't really know. Like, I don't really have a name for myself or anything like that. And maybe I should, like, you know, develop a name of some kind, something along those lines. And he's just kind of like, have you ever done this before? Or is this like your first time? And he's kind of making fun of him, right? You know, he's like, Peter's like, I mean, it's my first time ever doing this. And the guy's like, you know what? You're a natural. And you're probably right. Me breaking into this bank in the middle of the night, this is clearly a bad idea. This is definitely something that I don't really need to be doing. So you know what? You've helped me understand the error of my ways. I owe you, right? So he reaches out his hand to shake. And Spider-Man's like, dude, I appreciate it, man. Like, what's your name? And he's like, just call me the Shocker. And then just like blasts Peter Parker and just sends him flying across the skyline. And so what you do is you pick up later on when Peter Parker is all back out there again and he comes across the Shocker breaking into yet another bank. Now, this time he's a little more prepared than he was because he's aware of what the Shocker's capable of, that this guy in a lot of ways just kind of would trick him or something along those lines. And he even kind of breaks into his little quips, the sort of things that we're normally familiar with. But he's lulled into this false sense of security yet again when the two of them start fighting. Now, he does start firing off his webbing and different things like that. And of course, you know, incapacitating this guy. But where things become interesting is when he goes to just like punch him and just absolutely shatters this guy's bones, right? Like shatters his ribs. And he's just kind of like, dude, like, you absolutely broke my ribs, man. Like, what's your problem? And he starts begging and he's like, it's my wife, man. She's dying. We don't have any money. And so we can't pay for any of the treatments that she needs. She needs this. So I don't have any other choice. What would you do if you were in my shoes? And Peter's like, oh my God, man, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. He's like, wait a minute. Is any of that true? And he's like, what do you think? And then he blasts Peter Parker again. I absolutely love this. Now, the cool thing here is this whole exchange between Peter and like the Shocker is being overseen by the Green Goblin, watching all of this happen, which for the most part we know is Harry Osborn because Norman Osborn died. Again, there is the Ultimate Invasion playlist that you'll see at the end of this video. This is where you learn about how everything went down, but in essence, Tony Stark is blamed for just the deaths of so many people throughout the whole city of New York due to an attack that was not actually orchestrated by Tony Stark. It just looks like it was. But here's the funny thing, right? This is something that I want to talk about here for a second. The idea of Peter Parker pulling his punches, that is a relatively novel concept. It's relatively new, and you've only really seen it a couple times. The most obvious instance of this was in Superior Spider-Man, and that's where you really learned that Peter Parker was pulling his punches all this time. Because in Superior Spider-Man, Dr. Octopus gained the body or took over the body of Peter Parker. He got into a fight with Matt Gargan, the Scorpion, who had the Venom suit at that point in time. And in that fight, he punches Matt Gargan and knocks his jaw off his face. And that's when Dr. Octopus is just like, oh my God, like Peter could have beat us to death at any point in time. And so that's when you really start to realize that Peter has been pulling his punches. And ever since then, it's kind of become a mainstay of his character. Now, Peter recognized that, and there were multiple references to Peter recognizing that long before the events of Superior Spider-Man. But it was the first time that you really saw it being hit on the head so well, and another villain really beginning to figure out just how capable Spider-Man was. Now, the cool thing is that we do get the return of Kingpin here in a second, but I do want to talk about just this really adorable moment because the daughter of Spider-Man is like terrified of quote unquote Spider-Man. She only really sees like, you know, pictures of him in magazines or newspapers or wherever, but it freaks him out. When he comes back home, his daughter having no idea that her father is Spider-Man, when he comes back home, she sees him there and then she just immediately starts crying, right? Because she's just so terrified of him. And she thinks like this guy is like breaking into their home. And Peter's just like, no. It's cool, it's cool, it's cool. It's me. Can I bribe you with some ice cream so you don't tell anybody? I promise everything's okay. And she's like, yeah, I mean, of course, you know, you can bribe me with ice cream because she's a kid. right? I mean, I'm an adult and I can be bribed with ice cream, but she's just like, I don't like the costume. And so one of the cool things we're gonna see is we're gonna get this sort of beginning process of like the modified Spider-Man costume. And I'm curious to see what the new spider suit looks like. But at that point, you switch over to the Kingpin Wilson Fisk. Now, as he's depicted here, it is drastically different from the Kingpin that we're familiar with traditionally in Marvel Comics. Traditionally in Marvel, the Kingpin has been a guy who just ruled the criminal underworld in the city of New York. And depending on how far reaching you want to go, if you want to talk about Devil's Reign, he was the mayor of New York, so he just ruled the whole city with an iron fist at that point in time. But Kingpin never really answered to anybody. He never really had any kind of oversight of any kind. But one of the things to remember about this current Ultimate Universe, especially what's going on behind the scenes, is that you have the Illuminati out there and they're pulling the strings on everything. So guys like Kingpin, he works for them. And it's even one of the things that he's told here, right? He's like, you serve us. Myself and my fellow partners, we have divided this world amongst us. And after that, we have divided it further and gifted people like you your little kingdoms. And so you get to play king, Mr. Fisk, for as long as you can hold on to your kingdom. But the bigger kicker that's going on here, and really the bigger talking point that's taking place here, is that the Green Goblin, while it's happened off panel, he's attacked the Kingpin 3 times in 3 weeks. And so there's obviously guys out there trying to bring him down. Now, how capable Wilson Fisk will prove himself to be in Ultimate Spider-Man, only time will tell. So we don't really know how capable he's going to be in comparison to like his main Marvel Universe counterpart. Is he going to be as strong? Is he going to be as like authoritative? We're not 100% sure, but I am excited to see what it is that he's capable of. But again, switching to Peter Parker, when he gets back home, he says, so in the last few days, I've not only managed to get my butt kicked twice, but I also accidentally revealed my secret identity to my kid. Worse than that, I scared her. And he's like, not good, Peter, not good at all. Face it, you might not be cut out for this. But this is where you start to get this modification, because his daughter draws a picture of a spider and says, I drew a picture of a spider. I hope you like it. You're the best, love, May. So obviously this is going to be the basis for the new Spider-Man suit that Peter Parker is going to be getting. But it's a cool thing here, because what I love about all of this is despite the fact that Peter Parker is clearly in his like 30s, if not potentially his early 40s at this point, although he doesn't really have enough gray hair to be in his early 40s, he's still kind of figuring out how all this comes together. But one thing to remember, behind the scenes of all of this is Tony Stark in the future sending projections of himself into the past and contacting various people who were supposed to be superheroes. Why? Because as we talked about, the Maker, an evil version of Reed Richards, had previously come to this universe and changed everybody's origin stories. So they never really became superheroes at all. Thor was locked away, although he's currently with, Dr. Doom and Tony Stark out in the far-flung future. But like Captain America's frozen in ice, there doesn't appear to be like a Hawkeye, there's no Black Widow, right? The Green Goblin's Harry Osborn, which is kind of cool. But the Avengers in the traditional sense don't exist. We don't really know what's going on with the X-Men. We won't know until their comic drops. Black Panther is at war with like the Moon Knights. So again, it's a crazy, crazy situation going on. But Peter will eventually become a part of the Avengers. He will eventually become a superhero functioning on a team. We just don't know exactly how it's going to look. The most important question that I'm seeing people asking in the comments is, when do we get Miles Morales? Or are we even going to get him at all? I have no answer to that question. But with that being said, guys, we're going to bring this to an end. I know this video is shorter. If you need to get caught up, make sure you click this link to the playlist, and I will catch you all later. Peace.